Today we're going to talk a little bit about transitioning between Lightroom and Photoshop. When we're in Lightroom, we can be in our library, see all of our images. We've talked about how we can go through and edit each of these images. And this is one of the images that we'll use just as an example. This is a DNG image, which we created last semester when we talked about HDR. And I'm going to take this image into Photoshop to edit a little bit more. One way is to go up to Photo and go to Edit In and choose Photoshop, whichever version of Photoshop we're working out of. Another way is to right-click on the thumbnail of the image down here in the film strip of Lightroom, either in the library or in the Develop tab, and go to Edit In and then whatever version of Photoshop. So I'm just going to click Adobe Photoshop CC 2018. It's going to take a second. You'll see that Photoshop is opening, and now this image is inside of Photoshop. And I can begin editing, and we'll discuss how we can do edits in Photoshop. Now once I save this, it should save it as a Photoshop file. But to make sure that it saves it as a Photoshop file, and you should only have to do this once in your preferences in Lightroom, I'm going to flip back over to Lightroom. I'm going to select Lightroom in the menu at the top and select Preferences. And I want to make sure that I am looking up under External Editing. Now I want to edit in Photoshop CC 2018 or whatever version of Photoshop I have, and this is the way that my files are going to be placed into Photoshop and then saved back so I can see them in Lightroom. File format, I think by default it sets it as TIFF. Ours is going to be PSD. Color space, we'll get into a little more about color space later, and bit depth. But set your resolution. I think Lightroom by default sets it to 240. Set it to 300. And then once that is set, you should never have to change that again. I'm going to go back to Photoshop. I'm back in Photoshop right now. So once I've finished editing this in Photoshop, no matter what it may be, just do something really quick. Let's say this is my edit. That's awful. But anyway, we're going to click File, Save. There's a phone ringing. And then once this is saved, I'm back in Lightroom. I see that it is part of a stack. This is my original DNG. This is my Photoshop file. And I can go back and forth between these two.